not yeah.
So basically, wherever possible, most of the fields we have added to representation, because of which it has become very easy. Also, I tried the rubber banding also for long texts like addresses or organization names. That is also working.
Okay.
So it is hardly taking 5 minutes or so to change, like actually validate each and every or just change any value of anybody.
Right.
Per document, it is hardly 5 minutes.
The significant name, right?
Yes. Consider the last week, so validate figures maybe 20-25 minutes. I don't.
So I'm happy at least you think of finding value out of the data document.
Yes.
Very,
very helpful actually.
So, and then where is that ED wala not here also?
Here also there are 2 options: straw-head vinted and ED. So that also it is somewhere 27 hoga देखना.
I'm sure it is. I got यहाँ पे we EDD on a risk-based approach, EDD and they are all different now. We have clubbed them all as one of 2780. ये वाला 2780. It is not. So probably set it up.
Divide it.
तो यहाँ पे क्या होगा? Right. Get it more or so reference data में need to add. Reference data में Google reference data. Search out. Yeah. So what you've done is you put them all in one shot. Just keep adding rows. 8 को कम करो. ये वाला आगे का कट पूरा कट दो. Paste. It's a window open or tap the video. Let me do one. Let me see if I can log in.
So no, I checked actually. I could see the keys there 6B and 6C. So I'll have to check with Arjun. Why are those keys not shown? Even if they are blank, they should show.
You can check with her on that. Made some changes. Finally, that will take care of it. But
because in grades also, you see all the things which are not blank.
Right. Just this one you're changing. You already started that.
EDD.
Let's say, let me do this. I have it open. Okay. But you're doing it without the mouse. I'm also not opening it. Right. Just give me a minute. So I have a call at 6. I got the call. We'll do this. But this is fine. I think we proceed with this. Let me make this change. What is going to happen? Let me do one thing. Just save with whatever I have done so far so that you can at least see what is the picture talked about. So like if you can see all the options. They come go, just refresh this page, go back and come back. Stop sharing. Just जल्दी करो that we can continue to Achita, so one of you can set up a call at 7:30 and we catch up.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but see, this you get as problem.
Hare Krishna.
I'll finish the thing, but I'm saying it automatically becomes a drop down if there are more than 4 items.
Yes, we have that. God, give them the value.
Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances.
So,
Hare Krishna Mataji,
ठीक है,
Dhamma
we'll go back. So now those can drop, but I'll so
See if I can.
then we can release this to the operations team.
Okay. So I'll keep you
Check with us.
posted. And if this gets fixed today, so for tomorrow morning, I'll schedule a call.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so
Right. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
thank you.
Jai. Is someone going to introduce me or should I just start? Shall I introduce myself?
What's coordinator is here?
Mataji, actually, we did have one introduction call yesterday also, but still, if you could have some small introduction from yourself.
Okay, so how many students are in the class?
22.
22. So it looks like we have about maybe half here. Right, hopefully the
I
others show
guess,
up.
yeah, Mataji, might be some of them might be joining a bit late.
Okay. All right, so welcome everybody to today's class. I am Prabhupada Priya Devidasi, and I've been teaching Bhakti śāstrī for many years in Mayapur and now in the USA. And I'm currently in the Bhakti Vedanta class for VIHE, studying I'm in my last module, so we'll be studying cantos 11 and 12 this fall, and then that will be finished. So yeah, I really enjoy studying the Prabhupada's books and going deep into the Shastras. And I'm happy to see that you are all here enthusiastically attempting to do the same. And I wish you the best on this journey. And at least for this short time now of this month of May, which will consist of 12 classes, we'll be on the journey together, exploring the Nectar of Devotion. So today we will cover the preface and the introduction. Before we start, I'd like to sing together this prayer. I'm going to share my screen. It's the second verse of the Sat Goswami Astakam. Can everybody mute themselves? Because there's a lot of, there's some static and background noise. And I'll sing and then you can repeat, but I guess keep your mics off so that otherwise it will be all different timings. So, Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipuna Saddharma Samstapako Lokanam hitakarino tribhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandina Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyuga Shri Jiva Gopalako. Jai. Would somebody like to read the translation here for this verse?
Hare Krishna Mataji, please have my respectful obeisances. Can I read, please?
Yes, please, go ahead.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Sanatan Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, Shri Jeev Goswami, and Shri Gopal Bhatt Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus, they are honored all over the 3 worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mode of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna.
Jai, thank you. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militandena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Vidati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagujatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Cha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namustate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tirubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanivyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this verse here from the Sat Goswami Asana is this was written by Srinivasacharya in glorification of the 6 Goswamis, who Srila Prabhupada says that Rupa Goswami was the head of the 6 Goswamis. Although actually Sanatana Goswami was his elder brother and his spiritual master, but Rupa Goswami became more prominent due to his erudite scholarship and devotion and his writings. So we see here that what's being glorified is how the 6 Goswamis were very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. So the Nectar of Devotion is the product, or one of the products of that scrutinizing study. So as we read through the Nectar of Devotion, we'll see that Rupa Goswami quotes verses from different shastras, mainly the Srimad Bhagavatam, but many shastras, to back up everything that he's saying. And this is, Srila Prabhupada said that we should become so learned in the scriptures that any philosophical point that we make, we're able to back up with a shastric statement. And Srila Prabhupada personally did that. You know, if you listen to Srila Prabhupada's classes, he'll make a philosophical point and then he'll quote Bhagavad Gita, or he'll cite a Srimad Bhagavatam verse, or Brahma Samhita, or Nectar of Instruction, or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So Srila Prabhupada, as our founder Acharya, Acharya means one who teaches by example. So he set the perfect example of how to do that. And that's why in the Bhakti śāstrī course, we learn all these shlokas, right? Otherwise, what's the use of knowing a Sanskrit shloka? So we learn them so that in our preaching, we can, you know, make a point in our own words in a way that's relevant and relatable to the audience, but then we can back it up with the Shastra in order to give it authority, in order to make it convincing, so that people understand that we know that what we're talking about, and that we're not just making something up, that we're actually drawing on a very rich and ancient philosophical tradition. So this is what Rupa Goswami does. And they made it easy for us because the revealed scriptures, the Vedic literatures are such a vast body of knowledge, but they studied everything and they condensed it. They made it as concise. They took the essence, they extracted the essence. It's like Bhagavatam is, the cream of the cream of, the milk of Vedic literature, or it's the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literature. So the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the writings of the Goswamis are really like even beyond that, because there's so much in the Bhagavatam that's not directly devotional service to Krishna in his personal form, right? We have descriptions of the universal form, and there's all the genealogical histories, there's the structure of the universe, all that. But in the books of the Goswamis, it's just focused. It's so focused on bhakti for Krishna, Radha and Krishna. So this is the mercy of the 6 Goswamis and Rupa Goswami specifically for giving us this the essence of all the scriptures. Okay. So I'm gonna stop. Oh, hold on. Yeah? Somebody's at my door. All right, can you put it on the table, please? Thanks. Okay, all right, some more faces there now. So, so the preface of the Bhagavad Gita is Srila Prabhupada's introduction to the Nectar of Devotion. The actual Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu starts in the introduction. So this preface is just, it's kind of a little pep talk, that Prabhupada is giving to inspire us to really, read the Nectar of Devotion with earnestness, very seriously, and trying to get as much as we can from it and how beneficial it is. So first of all, he talks about the author. He talks about Srila Rupa Goswami and how he personally met Lord Chaitanya. He was personally instructed by Lord Chaitanya. That's where the inspiration to write this came from, and the content, the actual wisdom, because Lord Chaitanya gave instructions in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and we can read those. And then Rupa Goswami expanded on those in his books. So maybe you can, who can tell me a little bit about the history, the background of the life of Rupa Goswami, based on what's stated here in the preface?
Mataji, can I?
Sure.
Thank you. Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami are both our brothers. They used to work at the Mundane Emperor Shakar Mal, what was his name? Nawab Hussain Shah, and they met first time. They met first time when they were the Beer Khas and Shakar Malik. They met Lord Chaitanya first time at Ramkeli. There they decided that they want to renounce their life and want to pursue with their spiritual life under the direction of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So after that, first of all, Srila Rupa Goswami renounced, and from the he left his job from Nawab Hussain Shah, and he came and he came to Lord Chaitanya. Later on, Sanatan Goswami also wanted to leave the job, but the emperor Nawab Hussain Shah got angry, and he said he put Sanatan Goswami. Previously, he was Shakar Malik. He put him into the jail, and then when Rupa Goswami took off from his job, then he got so much gold coins. It was after leaving the job, it was like dollars, millions of dollars, and it was like when he was coming back,
Yes, sir.
And it was filled a large boat of this, and he divided the money in some percentage, like 50% he gave to Krishna conscious people, to Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, 25% to his relatives, and 25% he kept for his future certainties. And that from that 25%, Sanatan Goswami used that amount, and he also got free from the custody of Nawab Hussain Shah, and he also came to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu like this. And they didn't wanted to serve there, being they born in the Saraswat Brahman family, but if they don't get job there, so everybody had to suffer in terms of Brahmanas. So they did job to Nawab Hussain Shah. Mataji, shall I continue?
No, that's okay. Thank you very much.
I'm so sorry. I'm not good in speaking, but I wanted to say. Please forgive.
No, that's fine. No, you said a lot of nice things. Thank you. So yeah, so it's very interesting. Like your last point was that they accepted these jobs in the Mohammedan government for the protection of the Brahmins. So they were born in the Brahmin, Saraswat Brahmins, and then they knew that if they didn't accept this job, the Brahmins were going to be persecuted. So they accepted it to save the Brahmins, but then as a result, they were actually, ostracized from the Brahmin community. So it was kind of ironic. It was kind of ungrateful, but there it was. That was the culture at the time. That was the way it was, that if you accepted service of a Mohammedan, basically you became a Muslim. And so then you couldn't be a Brahmin anymore in Hindu society. So now what is let's have somebody else answer this question. What is the principle that we can learn from this, which Srila Prabhupada says is Lord Chaitanya's universal principle?
Yes, Mataji, shall I?
Yes, please.
Principle of Lord Chaitanya's movement is in educating and elevating everyone to the exalted post of a Goswami.
Okay, great. Yeah, so the idea is that anyone and everyone who knows the science of Krishna and who's engaged in the service of the Lord is in the highest position. It doesn't matter what family they're born in, they become actually in a higher position than a person born in a Brahmin family. And so Rupa and Sanatan Goswami are examples of that. And who's the other person he gives as an example?
Haridas Thakur.
Yeah, Haridas Thakur. So Haridas Thakur was never, he was born in a Muslim family. So it wasn't that he was a Brahmin before. In fact, he started off in a Muslim family, and then he becomes qualified as the Namacharya, the person who is the model, the example for all of us to follow in the chanting of the holy name, which is the Yuga Dharma. So that's the most important aspect of bhakti. And he and someone who wasn't even born in a Hindu family, who is basically considered an untouchable according to Hindu society, becomes, the acharya, the example for all of us to follow. So this is one of the purposes. This is one of them. I've asked you to identify 6 purposes. So this is one of the purposes of the Nectar of Devotion, is basically to teach us how we also can become elevated to the position of a Goswami. It says that anybody who follows these principles can become a Goswami. And he says that this principle is accepted by all Vedic literature, especially the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So does anyone know a verse from Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam which reinforces this principle, that it doesn't matter which family you're born in, what your social position is, you can come to the highest level of bhakti? You're just studying Bhakti śāstrī, so maybe you don't know. You haven't studied that far yet. So Krishna says, there's a verse there that, my Gita. quote this verse later. Anyways, it's 932 where he says that anyone, even those who are born, those of lower birth, be they, be they born in a sinful family or women or Vaishyas or Shudras, it doesn't matter. If they engage in devotional service, then they can attain the supreme destination. And then in the Bhagavatam, there are so many verses, right? About whether they're born in a Kirata family or Hunas or Andhras or like, the different races, or even if they're born in a family of dog eaters, they become eligible to perform Vedic sacrifices if they even chant the holy name, hear it, remember the Lord, or offer obeisances to him. So there's a multitude of verses that back up this point. Okay, so we heard about Rupa Goswami's life. And then, so Srila Prabhupada says that we are Rupanugas, which means that everybody in ISKCON, we're Prabhupada-nugas, but Prabhupada is saying that we are Rupanugas. And so Srila Prabhupada, he gave us his books, but his books are based on the books of Rupa Goswami. And of course, Nectar of Devotion is the primary one of those. So he says that the present Krishna consciousness movement is based on the authority of Srila Rupa Goswami. And it is only for our guidance that Rupa Goswami prepared his book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So Rupa Goswami is so merciful that, actually he came down from the spiritual world, because we know that we know his eternal constitutional position, that he is Rupa Manjari in Radha Krishna Lila in the spiritual world. And so he's a very intimate, one of the most intimate maidservants of Srimati Radharani in the conjugal pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So who knows better how to serve Radha and Krishna than Rupa Manjari? And that same personality came to this earth along with Lord Chaitanya, who is none other than Radha and Krishna together in one form, to serve Lord Chaitanya, and also to teach us how to serve Radha and Krishna. So who is a better person to learn how to serve Radha and Krishna from than somebody who is one of the most intimate servants of Radha and Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan? So that Rupa Manjari is Rupa Goswami, and she came down to the material world and wrote this book for us, for our guidance, so that we can be elevated to that position of being able to serve Radha and Krishna eternally in the spiritual world. So this is very incredible. It's like our fortune in having access to this knowledge is actually inconceivable. If you think about our position compared to the position of the author of this book, it's just like, personally, I'm just wondering what I did to be able to be holding this book in my hands right now. It's just like, who am I to even approach this book, even to approach this knowledge? But by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada was so merciful that he just, and that was Lord Chaitanya's mood. Lord Chaitanya's whole mood was to give the highest thing to the lowest people. He appeared in Kali Yuga. He didn't appear in Satya Yuga. He came in the most degraded age to give this process, the highest process that was never taught in previous ages, because it was too exalted. But he broke open the storehouse of love of God and distributed the contents. And so Srila Prabhupada, Rupa Goswami is in the same mood. He expanded the ocean of love of God. And then Srila Prabhupada expanded it all over the world. So this is really unprecedented. It's so much good fortune. And we just have to daily meditate on how fortunate we are to have this knowledge, to have this process, to have this association. And if we do, we will feel that we have no problems in our lives at all, because we've been so blessed that this is such a blessing that everything else is just kind of insignificant. This is like the real thing. Okay. So then Srila Prabhupada goes into a discussion about Bhakti Ras. And he defines Rasa as a kind of mellow or relationship whose taste is very sweet. And he says that Rasa, this word, can apply to a mundane relationship or as well as to a spiritual relationship. And then he compares and contrasts the two. He says that Bhakti Rasa is a mellow different from the ordinary rasa enjoyed by mundane workers. So how is Bhakti Rasa different from the mundane rasa? Let someone who didn't speak yet tell me.
Yes, Mataji.
Okay.
Shall I?
Yes, please.
Bhakti Rasa is totally different from mundane rasas. As mundane rasas are perishable, we can say they can give us boredom. But Bhakti Rasas are ever fresh. On daily basis, they can enliven us more and more. They are not like mundane rasas. Mundane rasas are like we get into them and then again we want to come out of them. But in Bhakti Rasas, these rasas are such kinds of rasas where we just want to live forever. So this is my understanding.
Okay, good. Yes.
Hare
Totally
Krishna,
right.
Mataji.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mataji, these mundane rasas end with our body, and rasas, bhakti rasas are eternal.
Yes, good. Yeah. So the word used is amrita, right? Amrita means eternal, and it also means nectar. So it's the rasa is especially nectarian and not just temporary, but eternally, as opposed to the mundane rasa, which is chapala sukha, right? It's flickering happiness. You get a little bit of pleasure, but how long does it last? It's just like a drop of water in your hand that evaporates in the heat. So it's temporary. And especially even if you do get some nice relationship that remains sweet till the end of your life, but when you leave your body, that's also done. So sooner or later, the mundane rasa is going to be finished. And then the other thing is that it's not satisfying. And the Sanskrit term used here is bhoga tyag, that alternating sense enjoyment and renunciation. So Prabhupada talks about people who are like asses, basically, the mudhas, that they work all week to earn money, and then they enjoy on the weekend with friends and family and going out and eating and doing different things. And then they get exhausted from that, and then they exhaust their finances and then they go back to work the next week to do it again. So, and he also talks about the hippies. When Prabhupada came to America in the 60s, there's this hippie phenomenon that people, these Americans were born in, wealthy families, and they had so much material enjoyment at their fingertips, but they just got fed up with it because material enjoyment doesn't give you lasting satisfaction. And so there was bhoga, but that just led to tyag. They left their wealthy families. They were living on the street. They were, living a life of just intoxication. And then after they got fed up with that too, they just became disgusted with that because it spiraled downward quickly and became degraded. And then, Krishna consciousness was the answer. So the point is that it's not, this material world is not ours to enjoy, and it's also not ours to renounce. So Prabhupada gives the analogy that it's like if you find some money lying on the street. So one thing you can do is pick it up and put it in your pocket and think, hey, I'm the enjoyer. This is my lucky day. And I've got some cash to spend on something that I like. Or you can be renounced and you can be like, oh, that's not mine. It's nothing to do with me. Like garbage in the street, just leave it there. So neither of those positions is satisfying or right. Because one is based on that I'm the enjoyer, the other is based on that I'm the renouncer. But we're neither of those. It just doesn't align with our eternal constitutional position. So our eternal constitutional position is that we're the servant of Krishna. Everything belongs to Krishna, and I can use everything in Krishna's service. So then the right thing to do is to pick up the money and return it to the owner. And Krishna is the owner. Krishna is the supreme proprietor. He owns everything. So that means that the way we interact with the world is not to try to enjoy it and not to try to renounce it in terms of just giving it up, but to use everything in Krishna's service in the spirit of yukta vairagya. That's the real renunciation. So, yeah. So yeah, Bhakti Rasa never dies. The relationship with Krishna is eternal. And Prabhupada cites, and the advancement that we make in Bhakti is also eternal. And Srila Prabhupada cites the verse from Bhagavad Gita that Neha Bhikrama Nasasti Pratyavaya Navidyate Swapam Apyasya Dharmasya Trayate Mato Vayat. In this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution, and even a little advancement on this path can save one from the greatest type of fear. And Bhakti specifically is like the chanting of the holy names is Anandam Buddhivardhanam, that not only does it last forever, but it goes on forever increasing. So, you know, imagine someone gives you $100. You don't want to lose it. So if you're blessed that you can keep that $100 forever, then great. But just imagine if that $100 is every moment increasing, 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 increasing. By the end, you know, you have a lot of money. So the same way, Bhakti, it's not just that we have it forever, but it's forever increasing. It's more and more and more. So as we progress in Krishna consciousness, you know, the more years you spend chanting Hare Krishna, serving Krishna, and following the principles of Bhakti, the more relishable it becomes. The more you enjoy it, the more you just feel so inspired to be a devotee. And if that's not happening, we're probably doing something wrong, because that's the nature of Bhakti, is to increase and to eventually overwhelm us with transcendental bliss. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada talks about, he gives a little sneak preview of the characteristics of devotional service. He says, I'm reading from page, this is Roman numeral 14, last paragraph. He says that Bhakti Ras immediately brings one to an auspicious life free from anxieties and will bless one with transcendental existence, thus minimizing the value of liberation. That Bhakti Ras attracts the attention of the Supreme Lord Krishna, and it will gradually elevate one from the material condition of life to the spiritual status, wherein we become free from all material designations. So, yeah, these material designations are something which are really holding us back, because Bhakti Ras it's the inherent condition of the soul to have this eternal, loving, devotional relationship with Krishna. And Prabhupada talks about that in the preface, how everyone has a propensity to love someone. That's the basic propensity of any living being, because it's the propensity of the soul. And he says no one can live without loving someone. And so we're looking for, you know, a partner, like a spouse, or we love our children or parents, or we're looking for a very dear friend who is, you know, an intimate companion that we can reveal our minds to, or, you know, people will get a pet or whatever, you know, we're looking for some living being as the object of our love, because not only do we need to be loved, but we need to love someone. But the problem is that we're trying to repose our love in ways that doesn't lead to our satisfaction. Because actually our propensity to love is unlimited. And so we need an object of love that is also unlimited. And all of us are limited. So when we try to, we want to give unlimited love and we want to receive unlimited love, but the only unlimited loving exchange we can have is with Krishna. So Prabhupada says that the missing point is Krishna. The missing point is where to repose our love so that everyone can be happy. And that place, that object of love is Krishna. And that's the only way that we can be satisfied. And then he says that by loving Krishna, we naturally love all living entities. So it's not that we just love Krishna and neglect everybody else, but by loving Krishna, we actually are enabled to love everyone else in the true sense, without lust, without any exploitation, without, trying to use them for our advantage, but we can actually love others purely. And then what are the analogies that he gives for that? That by loving Krishna, we can love everyone?
Feeding the stomach and putting the root of the tree, watering the root of the tree.
Yeah, so if you try to put food in different parts of your body, you're not going to you won't be satisfied. You won't be nourished. You'll just get weak. You'll just be a mess, literally messy. But if you feed the stomach, then all the senses will be enlivened. So if we try to love this person, love that person, our life becomes a mess, basically, and we won't be satisfied. But if we love Krishna, then everybody else will be satisfied, and we'll also be satisfied because we'll know actually how to love people and all living beings on a spiritual level. Because if we offer mundane love, which is basically lust in different forms, then it doesn't satisfy us and it doesn't satisfy the other person because it's based on material things. It's mundane. And we are not mundane, and neither are our friends and family. We're all spirit souls. So we have to love as a soul, as an eternal soul, as an eternal servant of Krishna. We have to offer our love to another spirit soul, knowing that they're also an eternal servant of Krishna. And then it's satisfying. So it's a quality of love. And I really like this statement here that the Nectar of Devotion will teach us how to turn the one switch that will immediately brighten everything everywhere. So this is a wonderful quality of devotional service and developing a relationship with Krishna, that when we put our energy into that, everything else in our life becomes glorious. Our family life becomes glorious, our careers become glorious, our education becomes glorious, whatever good qualities that we have become glorious. And without that, they're all just useless, basically. They're all like zeros. And then, but connecting them to Krishna through bhakti is like putting the one in front of the zero. So if you have, even if you just have one good thing going for you in your life, and you put it one, you'll have 10. If you have, 6 good things going in your life and you put a 1, you'll have 1,000,000. So so a person may be seen to have good qualities, like a materialistic person. But then but those things are not really valuing, then they don't really have value because they don't help the person in the real goal of life. They don't help the person actually progress towards the purpose of their existence, unless the one is there. And then if we put the one, then everything becomes good. Okay. Yeah, and without that one, then we're just going to be dissatisfied. As Prabhupada writes, that the root cause of our dissatisfaction is that our dormant loving propensity has not been fulfilled, despite our great advancement in the materialistic way of life. So no amount of materialistic advancement is going to satisfy us or make us happy. Just like if you have a fish and you take it out of the water, you can give it all kinds of comforts. You can put it on a nice beach chair. You can, give it a glass of lemonade. You can put a nice female fish beside the male fish. They're never going to be happy. You can give them a biscuit or whatever. They're just not going to be happy because the fish doesn't belong out of the water. He's not in his element. So in the same way, we are spiritual beings. We don't belong in the material element. And you can give us a material this and a material that, and, all these things that, all the commercials and advertisements and the media try to convince us will make us happy. But when we get those things, we might be excited a little bit in the beginning, like, hey, I finally got the latest iPhone or whatever, a nice car, or, partner relationship with somebody that's really good looking or whatever, and we get excited thinking, now I'm going to be happy. Now I've got what I want. Now my dreams are fulfilled and I'm going to be happy. And how long does it last? And there may be a little pleasure there, but it's flickering, it's chapala sukha and it's boga tyag, you like it and then you don't like it. But Bhakti Rasa is not like that. Relationship with Krishna, the happiness goes on increasing. It's totally satisfying, more than satisfying. It's so satisfying that it's like, it's kind of just like, yeah, it just knocks you out. Okay. So I think that's the main points here from the preface. Let's go to what you identified as the purposes of the Nectar Devotion that were given in the preface. So why don't you go ahead and just, if you wrote them down, then what we'll do is you can read them out. Let's just go through and read them all out until we get 6. They're actually like, you could have come up with maybe 7 or 8 of them, but at least let's go for 6. So somebody tell me one of them.
One of the purposes
Yes,
is
Mataji.
giving practical hints to live in material world by following devotional service.
Okay, great. That's definitely
Yes,
one.
Mataji.
Yep.
NOD teaches how to stimulate our original love for Krishna and how to be situated in that position where we can enjoy our blissful life.
Okay. Wonderful. Yes, Gaurav Shah.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Mataji, in the beginning of preface, Prabhupada says, like Nectar of Devotion helps us to understand our eternal engagement in Bhakti Rasa.
Good. Thank you. Oh, there's some hands up. Yeah, this is a good idea. If you raise your hand, that helps. Ruchi Gupta.
Hare Krishna Mataji. To give us practical hints how we can live in this material world perfectly, engaged in devotional service.
Yes, yep, that was said. Another one. Thank you. Tarun.
So the nectar of devotion is not presented to condemn any way of materialistic life, but the attempt is to give information to the religionists, philosophers, and people in general how to love Krishna.
Okay, good. Thank you. Priya Satyabhama.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Nectar of Devotion teaches us the science of loving every one of the living entities perfectly by easy method of learning Krishna.
Okay, yep. Rukmini Hari Sevani Devi Dasi.
To immediate bring one to an auspicious life from the anxiety and will bless one with the transcendental existence. Means it nurtures the devotional life.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Jai Kumari.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Yes.
Oh, it's Jia.
Mataji.
Is Jia Kumari?
Yes.
Sorry. Very good.
There are 12 kind of rasas as will be explained in this book, and by renovating our relationship with Krishna in 5 primary rasas, we can live eternally in full knowledge and bliss. This one.
Okay, so to revive our relationship with Krishna in one of the 5 rasas. Good. I'm going to share my screen where I think I have a list of these, which is all the ones that you just said, and maybe more. To the side. Okay, you can all see that? So let's
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, great. So let's go through and talk about how these are relevant for us personally, because we heard that this, yeah, Srila Prabhupada says that the Nectar of Devotion is specifically presented for persons who are now engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement. So this is for us. So then we have to think of how is this relevant for us personally, and also how for society at large. That would be a little more difficult, but it's good for thinking. All right. So first purpose that I have here is to educate and elevate everyone to the position of a Goswami. How is that relevant for you personally? Just go ahead and raise your hand if you want to say something. Yes, Rukmini.
Yes, Mataji, it is very much important for me if I want to grow in my spiritual life. And I read in Nectar of Instruction, the first verse only. So, which tells about the eligibility to become a Goswami. And just by following the 4 regulatory principles and by chanting 16 rounds, minimum 16 rounds on daily basis, one can elevate oneself up to the level of Goswami, and then we can preach also. So from my personal growth and to preach, I really this is really very much important for me.
Okay, good. Yeah. So Goswami means one who is the master of the senses, right? And our problem is that we're Godasa. We're the servants of our senses, and that causes us so much headache and trouble and entanglement and suffering lifetime after lifetime. So we need to get these senses under control. And you nicely referred to the Nectar of Instruction, the 6, the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals. So these cause us so much trouble, and we have to take charge of our lives. You know that I am the soul, and I'm going to use my intelligence, which is fortified with spiritual knowledge, to control my mind and discipline my senses and engage them in Krishna's service. And I'm not going to be dragged around anymore by my senses. So that's very good for us, because then we can make so much progress in devotional life. I see a couple of hands, but we would need to go through these. So I'm just going to take one response to each question. So now, can someone say how this first thing, elevating everyone to the position of Goswami, is relevant for society at large? Aradhya Gadadhar Prabhu, would you like to speak on that?
Mataji, we see that there are so many problems existing in this world. And the reason for the same is only one thing in particular, that no one has his or her senses controlled.
Yeah.
So if everyone's senses are controlled, no one would try to encroach upon others' property, Ishavasyan Vidam Sarvam, because we all will be Goswamis. And then there will always, we all will live in harmony, because the purpose is not to satisfy or gratify our senses, but to gratify Krishna's senses.
Yes, very good. I mean, what a wonderful world it would be, right? If everyone's senses were under control. And just imagine how the whole situation would totally change. So, yeah. And on top of that, just even if not everyone becomes a Goswami, but even if there are a few, you know, like Srila Prabhupada said, if even 1% of the population of the world became Krishna conscious, the whole situation would change. Because the potency of, you know, pure devotees on the planet, and people having models, that they're being role models. Like even in Vedic culture, it's not that everyone was a Brahmin, right? The Brahmins were just a small proportion of the human society, but they were there to give guidance, to be a model for everyone else to aspire to lift the others up and guide them how to connect their activities to the Lord in some way. Okay, so we really need that in the world today. Next one, to guide us to become solidly situated in Krishna consciousness. This one's kind of obvious how it's beneficial for us, and I guess similar to what I just said about the last one. So let's go to the next, to explain the concept of Bhakti Rasa. Oh, does someone have their hand raised? Because I don't see. How is learning the concept of Bhakti Rasa relevant for us personally? Okay, Tarun.
Yes, Mataji. So, like before, as we see in our before Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there were so many misconceptions about what is Bhakti, and there were so many sages. So they were not aware, they were taking Bhakti as a matter of emotions, or they were directly jumping to Rasa and those things. So they were not clear with the concept of what is real devotional service. And then after Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Prabhupada came, then the conception of Bhakti Rasa became clear, that Bhakti is not only emotion, but it is devotional service. And Prabhupada also called this book as the law book for devotees. Before taking initiation, everyone should read this book.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent point. Because after the Lord Chaitanya left the planet, there was so much corruption in the name of Bhakti. You know, that actually, like, what was meant to be Bhakti Ras, they were just making into a mundane Ras. And all these, 13 upper sampradayas. So to really make it clear, what is Bhakti, to re-establish the purity, the sublime nature of Bhakti. Okay, and how is that relevant for society at large? Yes, Ras Raman Krishna Das. Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji. Mataji, Bhakti Rasa, just a while ago, you just explained the difference between the mundane rasas and Bhakti Rasas. So it can be taught to the society what the difference is there in mundane rasas and Bhakti Rasas. And once everyone in the society comes to know about the Bhakti Rasas, then definitely there would be transcendence all around us.
Yeah, I mean, it's so attractive, right? It's like everybody wants love. Everyone wants to be satisfied. Everybody wants to be happy, but it's just not satisfactorily or permanently found in the mundane ras. So if we can tell people, like, look, give up this mundane ras and just take to the Bhakti ras, and you'll get everything that you're looking for in, the most satisfying way, the eternal way, and it'll just be a wonderful life in this life and in the next. Like there's one, it said that for devotees, for materialistic people, that the world is a place of suffering, but for devotees, Prabodhananda Saraswati, one devotee of Lord Chaitanya, said, Vishvam Purnam Sukhayate, that Vishwa means the universe, and Purnam Sukhayate is actually perfectly happy. It's completely happy. There's happiness all over. There's nothing but happiness in the universe. Because why? Because a devotee sees everything in relation to Krishna, and therefore they're always tasting the Bhakti Ras. They're just constantly relishing Bhakti Ras. So yeah, this is the happiness, the nectar for which everyone's always anxious. Okay, to elevate one from the material condition of life to the spiritual status by giving practical hints how to live in the material world perfectly engaged in devotional service. How is this relevant for us? Parama Karuna Madhava.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. I think, Mataji, just as you explained earlier, the concept of Yukta Vairagya, if Nectar of Devotion can teach us how to not have to renounce anything, but to engage everything in Krishna's service, then life becomes easy, especially for some of us who are householders. This science can be very helpful that while living in our household life, we can continue to please Krishna and do our devotional service.
Yeah, I mean, Bhakti is so amazing because it can actually has the power to transform material into spiritual. So everything that we do in this world, it can be done in a material way or in a spiritual way. So, cooking, if you cook for yourself just to eat something good, that's material. But if you cook for Krishna and take prasadam, that's spiritual. So it's just, it's practical. It's what Krishna calls karma. What is it? Yoga karma sukhosalam, the art of all work. The art of living in this world is the art of transforming material into spiritual by engaging everything in Krishna's service. And how is this relevant for society at large? Yes, Prabhu? Ras Raman Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji. Actually, common people are not at all aware of the bhakti rasas and the bliss in the bhakti. So once they come to know about that, then definitely they can shun the material activities, or they can engage themselves in the bhakti rasas and transcendental activities, which you called a little while ago Amrita, which is permanent in nature. You can say like that.
Yeah, and they don't really need to change much. They just need to connect, you know, they already have, everything is okay. They just need to connect it to Krishna, and that will purify it and bring it to its perfect manifestation. And then imagine if the whole society was doing this, then this world would basically become like Vaikuntha. You know, Prabhupada said that. Okay, to teach us how to stimulate our original love for Krishna and be situated in the position to enjoy our real blissful life in 5 different transcendental mellows. Let's see, Rasraman Krishna is doing a lot of talking. let's
Sorry,
take,
Mataji,
it's
not
exciting,
like
right?
that. I want to talk. If someone is there else, you can ask them also.
All right, so those of you who haven't spoken, please don't be shy, raise your hands. I'm over here in America, so I'm not going to bite you, even if I wanted to. All right, but let's take Rasaraman Krishna Prabhu since he's there, and then, okay, go.
Yes, Mataji. Mataji, whatever I have studied today, like you mentioned in the message today morning about reading about the 6 purposes of these anodi from the preface. So what I found, this one is the most important of the 6 purposes of the Nectar of Devotion, to stimulate our original love for Krishna. Love for Krishna is there in every one of us, but in dormant stage. So what we need is just to stimulate that love. And once we start loving Krishna, then definitely we would be able to love everything in this world. Nothing would be there which we won't be loving. And of course, just a little while ago, you compared it with the analogy of watering the roots of the plant, or giving the food into the stomach, so that everything is satisfied. Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah, so this is, it's rightly that you said that this is the most important, because this is the ultimate. This is what the others are all leading to. And it's relevant for us because we all have this love for Krishna within our hearts, and it's our nature. This is our eternal constitutional position as souls, is to love Krishna. And so our task in this lifetime, the most important work that we have to do in this lifetime, is to awaken that love. That's our goal. And the Nectar of Devotion teaches us how to do that, how to stimulate it, how to wake it up, how to give the wake-up call to our innate love. And as that love gradually awakens, then we're able to realize the details, the specifics about our eternal constitutional position with Krishna. Because we know that our constitutional position is that we're the servants of Krishna. But how do I serve Krishna? Do I serve him as a servant, as a friend, as a parent, as a lover? And all that becomes manifested gradually in bhakti. And when we realize this more specifics about our relationship with Krishna, then we can enjoy, even in this world, in this body, we can enjoy our real blissful life in that relationship. And that's described in later chapters of the Nectar of Devotion. Okay, to teach the science of loving perfectly every one of the living entities. Okay, how is that relevant for myself? Rukmini Hari Sevani.
Mataji, if I know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I'm a spirit soul. If I know this, then I will be able to know that all the living entities are part and parcel of Krishna only. And I will be able, if I am, then I will, as I am having this bliss, so I will also want all other suffering souls, and I want to connect each and everyone to the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Okay,
and
good.
And the science of loving perfectly, and if I am losing.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, what you said is really good, because it brings our compassion. You know, if we have this love for other living entities, then we'll be compassionate, and then we can help them to come to Krishna consciousness, and that will make a better world. You know, the world is so much lacking in real compassion. And we'll also have better relationships. You know, if we can actually have true loving spiritual relationships with other living entities, then that will improve the quality of our own relationships. And we'll be happier as a result of having nice relationships. Okay, the last one here is to nurture the devotional life of those engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement. So I mean, this one's pretty obvious that how's that relevant for us personally? We all need our devotional life nurtured, right? We're just beginners in bhakti. There's so much more to know. And just as a child needs to be nurtured by parents in order to grow healthy, emotionally, psychologically, mentally healthy, and physically healthy and strong to become an adult. So we actually really need a lot of nurturing on the path of bhakti. And of course, a big part of that is the association of devotees. We need senior devotees to nurture us. We need peers in Krishna consciousness to befriend us and, you know, to support us. And the Nectar of Devotion is also a shelter for us, or a nurturing. It's like spiritual food for us to grow on. So we should open up just like a baby bird opens its mouth wide to be fed by the mother so that it can be nourished. So we should also open our ears and open our minds and hearts to widely in order to drink this nectar, this amrita, this nectar of devotion. Okay, so that's the preface, and we're also going to cover the introduction today. So this is actually where the Nectar of Devotion starts. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 111 is this verse here, the Mangala Charanam, which is written by Rupa Goswami, which starts off Akila Rasamrita Murti. And Srila Prabhupada writes the translation here, but Akila Rasamrita Murti, this phrase is very important. It means that Krishna is the form, the Murti of Akila Rasa. Akila means complete, and Rasa means what we've been talking about, this sweet taste that comes from a relationship, and how it's amrita, how it's nectarian, and how it's eternal. So Krishna is the complete form of all eternal rasas, of all sweet eternal relationships. And Prabhupada talks about how there's 12 relationships, the 5 principal ones of neutrality, servitorship, fraternity, parenthood, and conjugal love. And then there are also the 7 secondary rasas of anger, wonder, comedy, chivalry, mercy, horror, and shock or ghastliness. So, and Krishna he's the form. He reciprocates with devotees in all these rasas. And in the later sections, the scope of our course, the Bhakti śāstrī section of the Nectar of Devotion, is just the first 19 chapters, doesn't go deeply into these 12 rasas. But the later sections, they talk about the rasas in a lot of detail. I just finished a whole course on the complete Nectar Devotion that Mother Urmila Mataji taught to our Bhakti Vedanta class, and it was amazing learning about all these 12 rasas and Krishna's reciprocations within the 12 rasas. So, but this verse is very important because it establishes the subject matter of the Nectar Devotion. Because we learn in the Bhagavatam that there are so many different incarnations of Krishna, right? That Krishna is, Ete Chamsa Kalapumsam, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, that he's the source of all incarnations. He's the fountainhead of all incarnations. All the other forms of Vishnu and everything comes from him. He's the source of the material and spiritual worlds, right? So in one sense, everything is Krishna, and all the forms, Vishnu Tattva forms, are worshipable, and one can also have a relationship with those. But Rupa Goswami is establishing that the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion, is not about those other forms. It's not about Vishnu, it's not about Matsya, it's not about Nrsingadev, it's not about Kurma, it's not about any other form of the Lord. It's not about Paramatma, it's not about Brahman, it's not about any other form of the Lord or any other feature of the Lord. It's only about Krishna. And for the most part, Krishna in Vrindavan. And that's what he establishes here. He says, let Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, be glorified. By virtue of his expanding attractive features, he subjugated the gopis named Taraka and Pali and absorbed the minds of Shama and Lalita. He is the most attractive lover of Srimati Radharani and is the reservoir of pleasure for devotees in all transcendental mellows. So he's specifically talking about Krishna, and the relationship that he's emphasizing here is the conjugal rasa. He's talking about Krishna, who subjugated the gopis, who absorbed the minds of the gopis, who is the attractive lover of Srimati Radharani, who is the chief gopi. So this is Rupa Goswami's mood, and this is what he's trying to guide us towards with the Nectar of Devotion. This is very sublime, this is a very elevated subject matter, but it's really the topmost, level of spiritual existence is a loving relationship with Krishna, the source of all incarnations. Okay, so I'll stop screen share for a little bit. All right, so then let's get right in here. All right, so having established the book's objective, the goal that what we're trying to develop here is bhakti for Krishna in Vrindavan. Krishna is the most perfect, he's the original form, he's the most perfect form, he's the only form that has 64 transcendental qualities in full. No other form of the Lord has all 64. And so we're talking about Vrindavan Krishna. And then in the subsequent paragraphs, the next few paragraphs, Rupa Goswami is offering obeisances. So this is standard that when you're going to write transcendental literature, you should always offer obeisances to your predecessors, to those acharyas and devotees who have inspired you, who've educated you, who've guided you along the path, to whom you're deeply indebted, that without them you wouldn't be able to do it. And so he offers obeisances first to his older brother, who is also his spiritual master, Sanatan Goswami. And he also offers obeisances to all the great devotees or acharyas who are like sharks in the great ocean of nectar and do not care for the various rivers of liberation. Aradhya Gadadhar Prabhu, you have a question or comment?
Yes, Mataji. Like you mentioned that 64 qualities are there in Vrindavan Krishna. So is it that they're not there in the Vasudev Krishna? I mean,
they're also there in Vasudev Krishna, but Vasudev Krishna is also here in the Nectar of Devotion, but the emphasis is more on Vrindavan Krishna because of the sweetness. That Maduram, and sweetness is really, all the rasas are there, the 12 rasas are all there in Vasudev Krishna, but it's kind of like, Prabhupada to say perfect, more perfect, and most perfect, right? Krishna is perfect in Dwarka, he is more perfect in Mathura, and he's most perfect in Vrindavan. So Rupa Goswami is guiding us towards that most perfect, most sweet, most wonderful form of Krishna in Vrindavan. Okay? All right. So it's interesting here because Srila Prabhupada's translating the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but he's also writing his own book. So in the same section where Rupa Goswami is offering his obeisances to his spiritual teachers, Srila Prabhupada is offering his own obeisances to his spiritual teacher, his guru, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He says, by whose inspiration I have been engaged in the matter of compiling this summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So it's very sweet. You know, he's following in the footsteps. He's showing what it means to be a Rupanuga. That Rupa Goswami is offering obeisances to his teachers, and in writing his book and in presenting my version of this book, I'm also offering my obeisances to my spiritual teacher. So Srila Prabhupada is acting as an acharya, following the footsteps of the previous acharyas. Okay, so now why are these acharyas compared to sharks in the ocean? Raise your hands. Let's have somebody who didn't say anything. Yeah. Ruchi Gupta, go ahead.
Maybe because they know very well how to swim in the ocean of this material world. That's my understanding.
Okay, so it's like Krishna says, of fish, I am the shark, because the shark is the king, is the main fish, the most powerful fish. Like the lion is the king of the jungle, the shark is the king of the ocean. So they have a very strong position. They're strong swimmers. No other, they're like the top of the food chain. And what else, Rukmini?
Mataji, sharks never caught by fishermen.
Okay.
So, yes. So like that's why Vaishnavas are like this. They're never caught of like birth and death, the cycle of samsara, and
Okay,
they even reject the liberation.
Right. Okay. So that's, yeah. So Srila Prabhupada compares the river, the impersonalists to the rivers. So the rivers flow into the ocean, and then they just merge with the ocean, and you can't really distinguish between what's the ocean and what was the river. It all just blends in and disappears, right? Whereas the sharks, they don't blend into the ocean. But what are they doing in the ocean? They're having all kinds of activities, right? They've got their families, they've got their like places where they swim around, and they, go to this new place and that new place. They're eating, they're doing all kinds of activities. They're having a life in that ocean. So in the same way with Bhakti, in the ocean of devotion, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the word Sindhu means ocean. So Bhakti is also an ocean. So in this ocean of devotion, we're not going to merge, but we're going to maintain our individuality, and we're going to have relationships, and we're going to have activities, and we're going to go here and go there and do this service and do that service with this person and with that person for the pleasure of Krishna. Just like the sharks are doing so many things. So yeah, we're not seeking to merge into an existence and merge into Krishna, but we want to be like sharks. We want to have a strong position in devotional service where we have something to offer Krishna. Okay. And then Rupa Goswami prays actually for the protection of his book, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, because there are so many people out there who might criticize Bhakti. Like one of you mentioned that Bhakti was seen as just like a sentimental, practitioners of Bhakti were seen as sentimentalists and not very philosophical, and just kind of a laughing stock basically in Hindu society. So Rupa Goswami is praying for the protection that these people who might either use arguments and logic to try to defeat the practice of bhakti or to minimize its importance, or people who will meddle with the science of devotional service and try to twist it into something that it wasn't meant to be. He prays for the protection, and he says that these people who would criticize or who would try to twist the philosophy, they're like volcanoes in the ocean. So a volcano is something very dangerous. But when it erupts in the ocean, because there's so much water and the water is cold, as soon as the lava comes out of the volcano, it just immediately cools. It might warm up the water in a small, confined area, but it's not going to evaporate the ocean. So he's saying that let the arguments of these logicians and of these, sahajiyas or whatever, let them be like volcanic eruptions within the ocean, that they can't actually cause any disturbance. That's his prayer. Okay, and then Rupa Goswami, he expresses his humility. So this is very sweet. And Prabhupada says that this is the mood of a preacher, that Rupa Goswami humbly thinks that he's unfit to actually write this book. And the interesting thing is that although he's very humble and although he feels that he's unfit, he still does it. So this is what we need. This is real humility. Humility is not that, oh, I'm unfit, I'm unqualified, I can't do it, and therefore I won't do it. That's not humility. That's just Maya. In that, yeah, I may be unfit, I may be unqualified, but real humility doesn't limit us in that way. Real humility, like Krishna conscious humility, is that yes, I'm unfit, I'm unqualified, but by Krishna's mercy, by my spiritual master's mercy, by the mercy of the acharyas, I can do it. Not by my own strength or intelligence, but by their strength and intelligence. They can empower me to do anything. And then the humility is just that I was never qualified, and therefore the credit is not mine, but I was empowered by these superior personalities, and all the credit that goes to them. And we see that Prabhupada always did this. He never accepted credit for himself. You know, in the preface of the Bhagavad Gita, he writes, if there's any credit in my connection, it's only because I've followed the order of my spiritual master. It's only because I never changed anything from Krishna's words. So in other words, it's not mine. You know, I can't put the feather in my own hat. I'm only just getting the mercy and the blessings and the empowerment of others. And that was Srila Prabhupada's mood when he came to the West. He said, I'm just an insignificant beggar. I have nothing. But on the other hand, I have my spiritual master. I have the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and Krishna, and therefore I can do anything with their blessings, with their empowerment. So that's actually real humility. Humility is not a weakness, it's a strength. Because when we try to do something on our own power with our own intelligence, then we're limited by our limited power and limited intelligence, which is really like so small. Because after all, we're just 1/10,000th the size of a tip of the hair. So what are we going to do? So if we're not humble, if we're thinking I can do something, then we might be able to do something little, but it's going to just be little because we're little, you know, we're tiny, so we can do something tiny. But if we think, no, I'm totally useless, I can't do anything on my own. So Krishna, please use me as your instrument and just do whatever you want through me, because I can't do anything myself. I'm just counting on you to use me by your power, by your intelligence. And then what we can accomplish becomes unlimited, because Krishna is unlimited. Do you understand? This is real humility. That there's nothing that I can do, or very little that I can do. But if I offer myself as an instrument in Krishna's service, then I can do unlimited things. And we see, like in the early days, what Srila Prabhupada's disciples did, because they were born in fallen families. They were born in families of meat eaters, and, you know, just they grew up like, you know, breaking all the regulative principles. And then they just came to Krishna consciousness and they felt themselves so unqualified, but they opened their hearts to Srila Prabhupada's empowerment, and they had total faith in Prabhupada and in Krishna. And they just went to countries they'd never been before, you know, just one of them or just a few of them. And they started Krishna consciousness. They attracted so many followers. They opened temples, they installed deities. And so that happened and continues to happen for anybody who's just willing to be used by Krishna with all humility. But as soon as we start to take credit for ourselves and think, I did it, I'm a wonderful devotee, just see the temple that I opened, just see all the devotees that I brought to Krishna consciousness, then immediately we become fallen and disempowered. Like Arjuna, right? He was empowered to fight the battle of Kurukshetra, but then afterwards, he couldn't even fight against some cowherd men. Or even like when it was time to step off of his chariot, he said, okay, Krishna, you can step down. And Krishna said, no, you get off first. So Krishna said, Arjuna went off first. And as soon as Krishna stepped off the chariot, the whole thing burst into flames because so many weapons had been fired in that direction that, and Krishna was just keeping all that at bay to protect Arjuna. Otherwise, Arjuna was going to be destroyed. But because Krishna was protecting him, he was okay. So we just have to accept Krishna's protection and Krishna's empowerment, and we can do superhuman things because we're getting empowerment from a source which is superhuman. Okay, so that's something to remember when you're preaching or trying to do anything. Now we're going to do a little overview here, which is given in the book. And I'll just give you a visual for this. So yeah, so here's an overview of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So there are, it's divided into 4 sections, and Rupa Goswami puts them as the cardinal directions, north, south, east, west. And what we're going to study in this course is the eastern section, or the eastern ocean of the ocean of devotional service, chapters 1 to 19, which is varieties of bhakti. So we're going to look at what bhakti is, and then the varieties of bhakti are going to be sadhana bhakti, 2 varieties within that, and then bhava bhakti and prema bhakti. And then after that comes the southern section, which goes more into rasa. It defines rasa and the components of rasa. And then the Western Ocean talks about the 5 primary rasas, and the Northern Ocean, the final section, is the 7 secondary rasas. So I was saying that these 12 rasas, Akila Rasa Amrita Murti, which can be exchanged with Krishna, they're described in a lot of detail in the Nectar of Devotion, but in the later chapters, which we are not going to cover in this course. We're going to just talk about bhakti and defining bhakti and different levels of bhakti. All right. All right, so now this is an overview of the eastern side. So this is, we're going to cover all these things. Yeah, so the introduction and tomorrow's class, chapter 1, is a general description, Samanya Bhakti. It's just basic, what is bhakti and the characteristics of bhakti. And then chapters 2 to 16 are all about sadhana bhakti, or devotional service and practice. Chapters 17 and 18 are bhava bhakti, or devotional service and ecstatic love. And then chapter 19 is just a short chapter about prema bhakti, or devotional service and pure love of God. So you can see that a very large proportion is devoted to sadhana bhakti, because that's what most of us need, right? We heard that this book is written for those of us who are engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement. And it's particularly to give us practical hints, for beginners about how we can stimulate our love of God, how we can transform material into spiritual world, into spiritual. So this is all kind of like beginners. It's sadhana, the beginning, it's practice. We're not feeling the ecstasy yet. We're not, swooning with pure love for Krishna yet, but we're practicing sadhana bhakti, which is going to lead us to those higher stages. So really sadhana bhakti is where the instruction needs to be very intensive. We need a lot of instruction. We need a lot of guidance. And then when we come to bhava bhakti, then the whole process becomes basically self-illuminated, because you're at an exalted stage where your heart is infused with so much love for Krishna that it's your direction is being illuminated from within. But in the beginning, because our hearts are still so covered by all these layers of material conditioning, then we often don't know what to do. We don't understand what's happening in our lives, and we need a lot of instruction. So therefore, the most instruction is given in relation to sadhana bhakti. Okay. All right. So we're going to have to speed up the pace here a little bit. All right. So now Rupa Goswami is going to go into definition of pure devotional service, which is one of the verses that you'll be memorizing in this course. Anyabilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavitam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktir uttama. So when first class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy, and fruit of action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. Okay, so one word that Srila Prabhupada elaborates on a lot in the purport is the word anushilanam, which means cultivation. So, and he says that cultivation means that there must be activity. If you're cultivating something, it means you're doing something. Like if you're cultivating a garden, that means, you know, you're cultivating the soil, you're, you know, plowing the soil, you're picking out the stones, you're putting in some fertilizer, you're planting the seed, you're watering it, you continue to fertilize it, you pull up the weeds that grow around it, you protect it with a fence. You're doing a lot. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of practical work to cultivate your garden. So in the same way, in Bhakti, we're cultivating our Bhakti Lata. We get the seed of devotional service from the spiritual master, and by the process of Bhakti, it begins to sprout and grow. But in order for that to happen, there's a lot of activity, right? The watering by hearing and chanting, the fence, which is the association of devotees, and then pulling up the weeds that sprout along. You can learn all about this in the Madhurya Kadambini, that, you know, things that sprout beside Bhakti, and then and taking care of it, you know, so, and avoiding offenses. So like the mad elephant offense of Vaishnava Aparad, so it doesn't become crushed. Then Prabhupada says there's two classes of activities. So in this cultivation of Bhakti, it's an active process, and there are positive activities and negative activities. So we have the pravriti, or things that we should do to, you know, propel us towards our goal, and then the nivriti, or the things to avoid. So what's an example of a pravriti activity in Bhakti?
Mataji, living in the association of the devotees.
Yes. Good. Yeah, I mean, all these things, chanting the holy names, living in a holy place, associating with devotees, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. We're going to hear all about these in future chapters. And then nivriti, things to avoid, avoiding bad association, avoiding, you know, sinful activities like meat eating, intoxication, gambling, illicit sex, and yeah. So in terms of the positive activities, Srila Prabhupada says that these should be with mind, body, and words. So these are, you know, the sannyasi has the danda, Tridandi sannyasi, and the dandas represent these three things, that he's totally dedicated his mind, body, and words in Krishna's service. So acting with the mind in Bhakti means thinking, feeling, and willing in relation to Krishna. So thinking about Krishna, thinking about his pastimes, feeling, you know, feeling some, at later stages, especially feeling ecstasy, you know, when you chant in kirtan, when you dance in kirtan, like feeling something, like your heart melting. And then willing means your desire. So you're desiring to advance in Bhakti, you're desiring to serve the devotees, you're desiring to please Krishna, you're desiring to do a specific service for Krishna's pleasure. And then words, of course, is kirtan and preaching, sharing Krishna consciousness with others, speaking Krishna katha. And then with body, there's so many different services that we can do. But what this, in this section, do you remember what Srila Prabhupada emphasized here in terms of engaging your body in Krishna's service? He stresses one point in relation to how to engage our bodies in Krishna's service. What was that? He says, okay, I'm reading from, yeah, you got it?
Yeah, by connecting oneself with the bona fide spiritual master, who is the direct representative of Krishna in disciplic succession.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. So, because the bona fide spiritual master guides us in how to engage our bodies in Krishna's service, because there's so many different things that we could do, but we also have to act in a way that, is suitable for our, psychophysical nature in the beginning, and then later according to our, sanatan, our eternal relationship with Krishna. So, and he said that an important, and it has to be connected, with Krishna. And the spiritual master is the person who connects us with Krishna. Prabhupada says the connection with the spiritual master is called initiation. From the date of initiation by the spiritual master, the connection between Krishna and the person cultivating Krishna consciousness is established. Without initiation by a bona fide spiritual master, the actual connection with Krishna consciousness is never performed. So if we want to be successful in bhakti, then we really need to accept initiation from a bona fide spiritual master. And, Krishna talks about that in the chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, the chapter called Transcendental Knowledge. He explains the process for receiving this knowledge. Evam parampara praptam imam rajashayo vidu sakalin eha mata yogo nashta parantapa. And then later he says, Tadvidi pranipatena paripashnena sevaya upadekshanti te yanam gyaninas tatvadarshana. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively, render service unto him. Self-realized souls can impart knowledge to you because they've seen the truth. So that connection with the spiritual master is a very essential feature of bhakti. And when we get to the 64 angas or limbs of bhakti, we're going to see that very prominently, that the first 5 are all in relation to the spiritual master. In other words, if you don't have that relationship with the spiritual master, like, you are just not going to get off the ground in bhakti. So everything follows from that, because the spiritual master engages us in all the other limbs of bhakti. And that's conveyed by we're still talking about anushilanam. So the anu in anushilanam, anu means following. So we need to cultivate Krishna consciousness, following in the footsteps of the predecessor acharyas, our spiritual masters. And then when we do that, then although our body and our mind and our words in one sense are material, but our whole existence becomes spiritualized, becomes transcendental to the 3 modes of material nature. And Srila Prabhupada says that devotional service has nothing to do with the material world. It's completely transcendental. And then, so that's anushilanam. And then another quality of devotional service is that it has to be anukuliyena, which means favorable. Because we were just saying that activity of the mind is to think of Krishna, and to talk about, activity of the words is to talk about Krishna. But then there's so many demons like Kamsa, Shishupal, who are always thinking of Krishna and always talking about Krishna, but in a very unfavorable way, right? They wanted to kill Krishna, they hated Krishna, they were insulting Krishna. So they were very Krishna conscious, but it wasn't favorable. So that cannot be called bhakti. But then again, other things which look material, when they're connected to Krishna, they also become spiritual. So he gives the example of the battle of Kurukshetra. It's just a field, right? And there are many battlefields all over the world. Why are we interested in the battlefield of Kurukshetra? Why do we go to Kurukshetra and offer our obeisances there as a holy place of pilgrimage? Because Krishna was there, because Krishna performed a pastime there. And he says that these places and things and associates and activities and everything that's related to Krishna is also, in one sense, Krishna, not different from Krishna, and therefore it also becomes worshipable. Okay, and then he goes into jnana karma dhyanavritam. So this is continuing the definition of pure devotional service, that karma jnana adi avritam. So anavritam means not covered. It's not covered. Bhakti is not covered by karma, fruitive or ritualistic activities, or by jnana, which means philosophical speculation which arrives at a conclusion of voidism or personalism. So when we say jnana, when we say karma jnana jnanavritam, the jnana is not talking about divyagan or transcendental knowledge. It doesn't mean that, oh, there should be no gyan in bhakti, so I shouldn't study the Bhagavad Gita, I shouldn't study the Srimad Bhagavatam because that's all gyan, and we don't want gyan because bhakti shouldn't have gyan. That's not talking about this gyan for two reasons. One reason is because there's different types of gyan, and one type is gyan or knowledge that supports bhakti, which supports a loving relationship with Krishna. That's the gyan that we get in the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita and the Goswami's books and all the books that Prabhupada gave us. And that's very favorable for bhakti. So we should cultivate that. And that is a form of worshiping Krishna. That's a form of serving Krishna. That actually is bhakti. To study Bhagavad Gita, to study Bhagavatam, to study that is bhakti. That is a practice of bhakti. So, but he's talking about the gyan of the impersonalists, that, you know, they study Vedanta Sutra and they speculate about it, and they come to the conclusion of voidism, that there is no personal form, that the goal is to just merge into the Brahmajyoti, like that. So that is an obstruction to pure devotional service, obviously, because you can't serve Krishna. You can't do personal service to Krishna if you're not a person and Krishna's not a person. Right? Krishna say for bhakti requires three things: the servant, the served, and the service. And basically impersonalists negate all three. So just be clear that if you're studying, let's say, you know, because sometimes devotees are criticized that, oh, you're studying Bhakti śāstrī, Bhakti Vaibhava, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma, you're such a jnani, Prabhu. You know, you'll hear people say that and say, no, this is not jnana, this is bhakti. This is pure bhakti, because this knowledge is all completely connected to Krishna. So when we talk about jnanis, we're not talking about devotees who study the script, the Bhakti śāstrās. We're talking about impersonalists who study Vedanta Sutra with the idea of merging. So you can just tell them that. Defend yourself, defend Srila Prabhupada, and promote the study of Srila Prabhupada's books, because we need that. Everybody needs that. Okay. And then karma also, karma just means activity, and there's also Krishna karma that is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita 11:54. That is basically devotional service. It's activities that are connected to Krishna. It's actually akarma because there's no reaction. But karma here means materialistic activities or rituals that are done for a material purpose, for the sake of getting material gain. And yeah, Prabhupada writes here in Nectar of Devotion that there are many persons who are very much attracted to ritualistic activities of the Vedas, but if one becomes attracted simply to ritualistic activities without understanding Krishna, those activities are actually unfavorable. So even though it's in the Vedas, it's actually unfavorable to devotional service. If you become attached to the ritual, and you don't come to the understanding of Krishna, because the goal of all these things is to understand Krishna. If you don't reach that goal, then what's the point? It was a total waste of time. Right? Shrama eva hi kevalam. That's what the Bhagavatam says. But, how's it go? Swanustitasya dharmasya. Dharma swanutita. Dharma swanus. What's that verse? Dharma swanus. Go ahead.
Dharma Sunishita Vishwaksena Kathasya Naut Padir Yatiratim Shramevi Kevalam.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I was blanking out on that verse. So yeah, do you want to tell us what it means? Aradhi Gadadhar, you know the translation? We can paraphrase.
Yeah, I mean, if we are engaged in all sorts of religious activities, but we don't ultimately reach the ultimate conclusion, which is, we don't, imbibe attraction towards Krishna and his glorious pastimes, and everything we are doing is, Shramevi Kevalam, is useless labor.
Useless labor. Yeah. Then on the other hand, there's the other verse that Narada Muni speaks that Tyaktva Swadharmas, I'm blanking everything. Tyaktva swadharma. How's it go? Okay, go ahead. Bhajan, I know this verse so well too. Bhajan apakko.
Athapate tato yadi yatra ka va bhadram abhut avushyate kovarthato bhajitam sudharmapam.
There we go. Good. It's teamwork. All right. So that means that tyaktva swadharma, even if you give up your dharma, you give up, it's in varnashram, everybody has their, their occupational duties or prescribed duties. Even if you totally abandon your duties, and in order for taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, you do that. And even if you fall down, right? Patet tato yadi, even if you become patit, if you become fallen, you basically bloop from devotional service. Still, that's better than one who perfectly performs their prescribed duties according to Varna and Ashram, but never comes to the point of devotional service. So, yeah, so even if you can do a little bit of devotional service, even if in social view you look totally irresponsible, giving up your duties, and even if you still, so now you're a material failure, and then you try devotional service, and even if you fail at that, still your life is better than somebody who had a very materially successful life. Why? Because they didn't gain anything. At least you gained something. You gained some little bit. So that's an encouragement for us that any little bit, neha vikramanasasti, it's swalpa. Alpa means a little bit. Swalpa, if just a little bit of advancement can save us from the greatest type of fear, and will continue in the next life. Why? Because it's amrita, right? It's eternal. It never dies. Everything else is lost at the time of death anyway. So what's the point? What did you gain? All right. So then karma, anya bilashita shunyam, jnana karma dhyanavritam. So we talked about gyan, we talked about karma, and then there's adi. So adi in Sanskrit means something like etc., like karma, gyan, and etc., and so on. So that and so on is explained. Those other things that might cover bhakti. We're talking about things that vritam, that cover bhakti. So what else can cover bhakti? Also vairagya, renunciation, can cover bhakti if it's not yukta vairagya. Yoga can cover bhakti if it doesn't lead to bhakti yoga. If we just stay stuck with like, hatha yoga or ashtanga yoga, those things can become impediments to bhakti. Or sankhya, if we become too analytical, is trying to understand this material world and like what makes it tick. A little bit of that is good because we can understand the trap that we're in. We can understand the material predicament and how to get out of it. But if we stay stuck in that and we don't actually like develop our love for Krishna, then that also can be an obstruction. And then yajna, sacrifice. If we're doing many sacrifices, but we're not ultimately developing a loving relationship with the goal of all sacrifices, right? Bhoktaram yajna tapasam, Krishna, recognizing that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices and austerities, then, and it's interesting because these are all religious things. These are all things that we look at as, admirable. If somebody's renounced, if they practice yoga, if they have an, intellectual understanding of material and spiritual natures, if they're performing some sacrifices, that, they look like a pious, religious, a good person. But for devotees, those are impediments if they don't support our loving relationship with Krishna. So we always have to be, these things can cover. So, yeah. In the first line, he says, Anya bilashita shunyam. So other desires than to please Krishna should be shunyam, should be zero, like none of those. We should have no other desire except to please Krishna. But then when he talks about karma, jnana, dhyanavritam, he doesn't say shunyam. He doesn't say no karma, no gyan, no renunciation, no yoga, no yajna. He doesn't say the shunyam, he says anavrita. Because if they're supportive to bhakti, then they're fine. Right? Like we were talking about, that gyan, in really knowledge about Krishna, is necessary for bhakti. And activity in Krishna, in relation to Krishna, is necessary for bhakti. That's anushilanam. And then renunciation, yukta vairagya, renouncing the enjoying spirit and using everything in Krishna's service, is necessary for bhakti. And yoga, right, leading a disciplined life, being regulated in our eating, sleeping, mating, defending, all those, the material aspects of life, they're all necessary for bhakti. And Sankhya, understanding the difference between matter and spirit, and the science of how to convert matter into spirit, understanding that we're not this body, that we're spirit souls, that's all necessary for bhakti. And then yajna, sacrifice, it says that work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu must be performed. So that mood of sacrifice is pervasive in bhakti, but it has to be done with a mood of devotion for Krishna. So it should be done, it should enhance, those things shouldn't cover bhakti, but they should shine a light on bhakti. They should be like a spotlight, that bhakti's on the stage. Bhakti is like on the stage, front and center, and those things are just shining a light so that it becomes illuminated and it becomes very clearly the most prominent things in our lives, bhakti. Okay, so then we have another slide here. Okay, so in this definition for pure devotional service, it's broken down into two categories of things: the Swarup Lakshana, or those essential characteristics, and the Tatashta Lakshana, or marginal characteristics. So, let's see. Yes, so the Swarup Lakshana, these are the things that define bhakti. So if you want to answer the question, what is bhakti? Then it's this. It's activities using body, mind, and words. Some of them positive things that we should do, some of them negative things that we stop doing. So all those activities for the pleasure of Krishna, that which are done in a mood that's favorable for the pleasure of Krishna. So that's bhakti. And then the tatashta, those are, so the Swarup Lakshana, they define the basic bhakti. So as long as you're doing some activity for the pleasure of Krishna, you're doing bhakti. Okay, that's like entry level bhakti. And then tatashta Lakshana, that defines Uttama Bhakti. So the first two lines are just, this is bhakti. And then the second line is first class devotional service. So there's beginner's level, middle level, and advanced level. It's like anything. So Uttama means advanced. And, Madhyam means middle, Kanishta means beginner. So when we talk about Uttama Bhakti as distinct from basic bhakti, beginner level bhakti, then the Uttama Bhakti has these characteristics: that there's no other desire than to please Krishna, and that it's not covered by jnana, karma, or those other things, or anything else. It's not covered by anything else. Because in the beginning of devotional service, in sadhana bhakti, we're doing some activities to please Krishna. That's all good. But we may also have other desires, right? You may be doing your service not only to please Krishna. You may have other motivations, right? That you want to maybe be respected within the society of devotees. Maybe you want to get a position in your temple community. Maybe you want to even, attract a member of the opposite sex. You want a nice devotee spouse, so you're going to Mangalarti and chanting nice rounds so that somebody will think, oh, there's a nice devotee, let me marry them. Devotees do devotional service with many motivations. Or you might accept a certain service rather than another one because you feel like it gives you more, it gives you more authority. It makes you look better socially, or there's some stipend involved. You get a little bit of money in exchange for it. So there are all these reasons. but it's still bhakti, but it's not Uttama Bhakti yet. So that's the difference. So all the levels, Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttama, they all have the Swarup Lakshana. It's always involves doing something in a favorable mood for Krishna, but pure devotional service is something specific. It's more narrowed down to, yeah, this is when you have no other motivation. Your only motivation is to please Krishna, and it's not covered by anything else. So, yeah. So in relation to being for Krishna, that means that bhakti is only for Krishna. It's not for any demigods. Because when people worship demigods, it's not devotion, it's business. You know, people worship demigods in order to get some material blessings from those demigods. That is not bhakti. So Rupa Goswami emphasizes it's Krishna. It's Krishna, Akila Rasa Mrita Murti, that Krishna. And it can also be Krishna's expansions, Krishna's paraphernalia, Krishna's abode, like Dham Seva, Krishna's deity, Krishna's devotees, Vaishnav Seva, that's all bhakti. So if you're worshiping a demigod in the mood of, you know, that like Lord Shiva, that he's the best Vaishnava, and so I'm worshiping him to get pure bhakti, then that can be bhakti. But Srila Prabhupada, you know, the inclination in worshiping Shiva is generally to get a material thing. So Prabhupada didn't encourage that. Even, you know, to worship Lord Shiva, have Lord Shiva on your altar as a Vaishnava, he didn't encourage that. Better put Srila Prabhupada there, or, you know, our acharyas, our Vaishnava acharyas in our parampara. Okay, then devotional service is active. The devotee is internally active and externally active. And as we mature, then we become more internally active. In the beginning, it's just kind of like, sometimes devotees say like, fake it till you make it, you know? It's like, you've got your body there in the temple at Mangalarti, but maybe your mind is elsewhere, but physically you're there. Or physically you're paying obeisances to a sannyasi, but in your heart and mind, you maybe don't have the love, the respect, the gratitude, but still just you're putting your head on the floor because that's what should be done. But then as you advance, it becomes more internal, like the appreciation, the gratitude, the understanding, the love actually is deeply felt. And then in that case, you want to do even more activity because love implies actions, right? If you love somebody, you want to serve them, you want to do something for them. And yeah, not mechanically, but with a conscious desire to please the Lord. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our time, and that's basically the main points from the introduction. Srila Prabhupada just finishes with by quoting this second verse, which is also a memorization verse for y'all. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikesha sevanam bhakti uchyate, which explains that bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service to the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and simply by being employed in the service of the Lord, one's senses become purified. So this verse is explaining basic bhakti. It's not Uttama Bhakti. This is, he says, Sevanam Bhakti or Uchyate, that this is called bhakti. Bhakti just means engaging your senses in the service of the Lord. And by the meaning of the verse, we can see that this is not pure bhakti because the person is still in the process of becoming purified of material designations, purified of desires for sense gratification. So it's not yet Anya Bilashita Shunyam, but it's getting there. And then the pure bhakti is the previous verse. Anya Bilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karma Dhyanamrita. Okay? So I'll read this last sentence here from it's about getting free from material designations. This is very important because all these relationships that we have in the material world and all the things that we think we are, that, you know, I'm a businessman, or I'm a doctor, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a mother or a father, or I'm this person's wife, or this person's husband, and this person's son, this person's daughter. These are all temporary. And Prabhupada writes that as long as one identifies himself as belonging to a certain family, certain society, yeah, so if I think I'm American or I think I'm Indian, even a Varna ashram designation, if I think I'm a brahmachari, if I think I'm a sannyasi, those are also upadhis that need to be given up. Sarva upadhi vinir muktam, all those designations need to be given up. There are no brahmacharis in the spiritual world in Goloka Vrindavan. So that also needs to be given up at the time of death, even if you're like hardcore brahmachari. So he says that as long as we identify with any of these material designations, then we are said to be covered. Our bhakti is covered. It can't fully blossom. It's like it's oppressed. Just like if a light bulb is covered with a cloth, it's not going to shine brightly. So we need to remove the covering so our love for Krishna can shine brightly. It says when one is fully aware that he does not belong to any family, society, or country, but is eternally related to Krishna, he then realizes that his energy should be employed not in the interests of so-called family, society, or country, but in the interests of Krishna. This is purity of purpose and the platform of pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so I talked a lot and I'm happy that we're able to cover all this content. I was a little worried. We have a few minutes left if anyone has a question or comment. Tarun, Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji, I have a question. Can I ask Mataji a small question, please?
Yes, please.
Mataji, in between you said that for connection with spiritual master, initiation is necessary.
Yeah.
So Mataji, ours, this is ISKCON, is a Shiksha Parampara or Diksha Parampara, Mataji, because in between Bhakti Vinod Thakur took Shiksha Parampara from Jagannath Babaji Maharaj. It was not Diksha. So Mataji,
That's
how
right.
do we understand this, Mataji?
So the point is that you need to take initiation from a bona fide spiritual master. You need a Diksha Guru. Diksha Guru is one person, doesn't change. But you can have many Shiksha Gurus. So it may happen in the course of your spiritual life that your relationship with one of your Shiksha Gurus may be more prominent than the relationship with your Diksha Guru, because the mood of the particular Shiksha Guru suits you more, or because maybe your Diksha Guru is not accessible. You can't really talk to them on a daily basis because they have thousands of disciples and are very busy. And so that Shiksha Guru becomes actually the person who helps you and guides you and instructs you more in your spiritual life than your Diksha Guru. So in that case, the Shiksha Guru may become prominent. So if you would think, if you would kind of reflect on your spiritual life and think, well, who is my main guru? The name of the Shiksha Guru may be the one that pops up. But that's not to say that you don't need a Diksha Guru. Still, you need a Diksha Guru. And often it's the case that the Diksha Guru will be your main Shiksha Guru, but it's not always the case. That's all. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had a Diksha Guru, right? Bipin Bihari Goswami. He took initiation from him, but he's not on the altar because he wasn't the prominent guru in his life. He wasn't the person who was actually like guiding him and instructing him along the path of bhakti. But it's not that he didn't take Diksha. So Diksha is necessary for everyone in all cases. But we can remain open to the fact that our Diksha Gurus may not be our most prominent Shiksha Guru.
Yes, Mataji. So Bipin Bihari Goswami was also a Gaudiya Vaishnava?
I'm not really sure. The thing
Yes,
is
he
that at that
was.
time, he was. Okay, there you go. Yay, Vimla Prasad Prabhu. How do you go?
Jai.
All glories to your service.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Gracing my class with your presence. Okay.
Mataji, in the
Thank you
same
so much.
regard, I want you to ask.
Yes. Go ahead, Prabhu.
I'm saying you go
Mataji, in
on.
the same regard. Yeah, in the same regard, I wanted to ask that this this Diksha Guru, like in case of, specifically, of course, and specifically in case of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we see that Vipin Bihari Goswami, I mean, we hear that he was not following many of the, primary activities. I'm not strictly following, like, he was taking pan and all these things. And that, so in this regard, we could elaborate that, he was not much relying on Diksha Guru and on Shiksha Guru, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, in the ancient culture, which still may be traditional in some parts of India today, is that there would be like a family guru. I mean, you all know about this more than me. There'll be like a family guru. So then you will just naturally take initiation from that family guru, even if they're not up to the Vaishnav standard. So then you will find someone else for Shiksha who will actually help you in, who's a role model for you in Bhakti. But like in ISKCON, see, in ISKCON, we're very fortunate because we have, that's one of the good things about being a part of an institution, and I think was it Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur? He said that an institution is a necessary evil because there are a lot of problems that come with the institutionalization of spiritual practice or spiritual society, but there are also many benefits. And one of the benefits is that we have a whole vetting process, for approving ISKCON gurus, for approving GBCs. And so, although we still need to use our own intelligence to choose wisely and test our gurus and, make sure that we make the right choice in selecting a Diksha guru, but it's a lot safer because it's not like, you don't have a whole wide open, sphere of like any person walking the planet that might be your Diksha guru. It's like, there's a certain, there's a set number of people and they've all been kind of like, been through fire to get to that position. They've been tested and they're being monitored, and there's the whole Guru Services Committee and all these things to make sure. And as soon as there's some, some suggestion of a glitch, there'll be a whole investigation, and all this. So that helps to protect us. So it's safe. We have a degree of safety in choosing a guru in ISKCON. So we're not going to end up with someone who's chewing pan or whatever. Okay. So we have a lot to be thankful for.
Yeah, Mataji, one small question related to this only. May I ask, Mataji, time is over, so.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So Mataji, if somebody approaches us, if he has taken Diksha from outside and he adopts a Shiksha Guru from ISKCON, so would it be right, or what should we say in that? So he has a Diksha Guru or Kul Guru, as you said, the family Guru, or maybe a bona fide Guru also, but outside ISKCON. And now he joins ISKCON. So what should we suggest at that time?
I mean, if a person is initiated by a Guru outside of ISKCON and that Guru is not breaking any regulative principles, that they're a Vaishnava in good standing, then they should not be rejected. That's actually sinful to reject a Guru in good standing. And, as long as they're in one of the Sampradayas, so presumably they're in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, then there's no problem with that. They can take a Shiksha Guru in ISKCON and be a member of ISKCON.
So can we take another Diksha also if that Guru has passed away, the previous Guru?
No, you don't take Diksha. You don't take Diksha twice unless your Diksha Guru falls down from the practice, from the standard of Bhakti. So Srila Prabhupada's not on the planet anymore personally. Prabhupada's disciples are not going to take Diksha from someone else, right? That would just be ridiculous. That's not done. That's not the etiquette.
No. Somebody who has taken Diksha from outside and the Guru is no more.
No, he's still this. It's still it's the same principle applies. It applies to any bona fide Guru. It's not. I mean, ISKCON is not the only group that has where there are pure devotees. So someone may have a pure devotee Vaishnava Guru outside of ISKCON, and we should respect that and honor that. And we can also be pleased that they want to serve within ISKCON. As long as they don't, you know, the trouble is that sometimes they will come into ISKCON not with a pure desire to actually serve Radha and Krishna through ISKCON, but they come with a desire to, you know, like recruit ISKCON members over to their camp and take them out of ISKCON and over to their, you know, branch or whatever. So that's when it becomes problematic. And that's why, you know, we have a generally tend to have a negative view towards devotees outside of ISKCON, is because they've actually attacked us in so many ways. Because in the beginning we were very open. We're like, oh yeah, they're Vaishnavas, welcome to the family, you know, we're on the Chaitanya tree, and you know, like that. And we welcomed them to our temples and our programs and our festivals. We even gave them positions of authority in our temples. But then it ended up causing havoc because their intentions were bad. And they brought so many devotees out of ISKCON into their camp and caused a whole, like, a lot of conflict. So now we're being very careful. So we have to be very careful. And generally, if a devotee, you know, has a guru outside of ISKCON, they can still come and do service and take part in our programs and things, but they're not likely to become, you know, like a temple president or somebody that has like a major impact on the spiritual lives of other devotees.
Okay, Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So thank you, Prabhupada Priya, for this. You have this to the force, you see. So I was like always awaiting this golden opportunity. So I couldn't be there in the beginning. Somebody can turn off that. Yeah, some television going on. Nancy Mataji, is it you? Yeah, very good. So yeah, I mean, Prabhupada Priya Mataji is also one of my inspirations. And as you must have figured out by now, she bites the bullet even if you throw a loaded question. As I was seeing, there are so many loaded questions, but like, she is what she is.
You guys can ask any, you can ask me any question. Don't be afraid. I'll take any question at all.
Yeah, that's the way it is. That's the way it's like gradually then devotees open up, and that's why like these classes sometimes tend to go beyond the schedule, because they really find devotees like you, like they generally, even if they do, they get it on a 1 hour slot, maybe in a Bhagavatam class, and how many questions can you put in a Bhagavatam class? And after that, the devotee is gone. So, and in most cases, devotees who are like very candid, like you, never get invited twice.
No, I get invited a lot. Most people like me.
That's what I'm saying. So then they don't. So then, yeah. So then you can hear more from Prabhupada Priya Mataji. There's a YouTube channel, so you can hear more from her with this. And she's not as I would say, she's not an armchair scholar. She is a hardcore hitting the road Sankirtan devotee. Many years, 20+ years of teaching experience, both in Vrindavan and Mayapur, in our very own ISKCON schools, and apart from being what she's doing now. And she's also an author, you know, by the way. She's got this small book. I forgot the name of that book.
It's called Rising Above It All.
Oh yeah. So there she has got her legal name printed on it, Wendy.
Yeah.
So then, yeah.
I think I'm going to reissue that book with my spiritual name. But anyways, I'm also working on it. I'm also working on a commentary of Bhagavad Gita.
Wow, that's tremendous. So yeah, that's exactly like, I mean, following the footsteps of Riddhanand Maharaj. So I would say, yeah, as so much required now. It's like go on interpreting Bhagavad Gita according to the times. So yeah, thank you very much for being here, Prabhupada Priya Mataji, because like we were really looking forward to this association. I mean, I see like sometimes attendance might be a little bit of a problem. Some devotees, it's like it's not everybody. You won't find everybody attending the class on all days, but yeah, whatever it is. So, and I can only request the devotees take full advantage of Prabhupada Priya Mataji's live association, because you can always hear those recordings, but you cannot ask the questions in the recordings.
Yeah.
And I believe Prabhupada Priya is quite open, like you can contact her, like take her contact number and like talk to her.
Also, I joined
highly encourage that.
I joined the WhatsApp group. So if you have any questions after class, you can also post them on the group. I'll try to answer them.
Why not? Why not? Like both like on that platform, or maybe on another platform, you might be like if she is open to, you can in person. Very much encouraged. Thank you for being like there. Thank you, Prabhupada Priya Mataji. I've been more of an intruder. But like,
thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I'm very happy that the students were very lively and answering all of my questions and giving good Shastra references and examples.
That's a star on their charts.
So keep doing that, and you're all going to get a lot of blessings.
Yeah.
And I like when everybody participates. So the ones
Prabhupada Priya is very interactive. It's not like there's like somebody. Prabhupada Priya is not an uninterrupted and uninterruptible speaker.
Yeah, also if I'm talking, sometimes I get carried away. Like sometimes I get really fired up and just but you can always just raise your hand and I'll take a question or comment in the middle. I want to hear your thoughts also.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So see you tomorrow, same time, same place.
Jai.
Haribo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.